Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the evening. Joining me today on a very special edition of today's show, you know her from the Staff and Graph podcast, formerly of the Vancouver Canucks, the New Jersey Devils, Hockey Canada, a million places all over the hockey world. It is Rachel Doerrie. What's up today, Rachel?
Not much, Sean. Or Bill, sorry. We were just talking about Sean Walker. That's where that came from. So yeah, spoiler alert. I'm doing well. Obviously, my brain is scrambled eggs right now, clearly. So things are going well on this Thursday. You're not wearing a pink hoodie today, so I guess I'm scrambled eggs.
Yeah, it's the middle of the week for me. I kind of just lose all semblance of what day and time it is. But we did speak last week, and since then, you have had the chance to actually see the Flyers and Leafs play head-to-head up in Toronto. Auston Matthews had a bit of a game, went wild in about 7-minute period, scored a natural hat trick. Philly made a comeback, but then ultimately the Leafs did their overtime thing and won in the first, 12 seconds or whatever it was. That was their second of the eventual 5 straight without Morgan Riley. But I want to know right off the top, what were your impressions after seeing the Flyers up close?
Yeah, I think they play a system that, as they continue to inject talent into their lineup, is going to be a sustainable system through the spring, I would say. And one of the players that really, really impressed me was Travis Konecny. He's somebody this season I've been watching pretty closely. I really enjoy what he brings on the ice, whether he's mixing it up with Brendan Smith in the Stadium Series game or he's sniping it over the glove, bar down. Like, he's just such a Swiss Army knife type of player. He can play in the alley and he can play on the pond. And I think that's probably the quintessential Philadelphia Flyer, outside of, I guess, Sean Couturier, who was named captain, I guess, the day after last time we talked. But I would say I was impressed with Travis Konecny. I liked Owen Tippett. And I think on the back end, I really noticed their commitment to shot blocking. And that's something where, whether it's Torts or Bradshaw as well, that's something that they've always kind of preached in stops that they've been previously, now in Philadelphia together. I really noticed that as well. They're constantly in lanes, and yes, Auston Matthews is going to do Auston Matthews things. He's been doing Auston Matthews things all year. But I thought the Flyers actually did a really good job of shutting down pretty much everybody else in terms of getting in the shooting lanes, disrupting passes, things like that. I thought they were a lot better defensively than I think we expected them to be this season, and that's a huge positive.
Yeah, the defense it's really taken a step this year, and the shot blocking. I remember Torts all the way back in 2004 with that Tampa team. It was so frustrating in the Eastern Conference Final. Just like, and they'll just never get a shot through. We're going to lose 2-1. Like, it's been that way with Torts forever, and it continues to be that way. I like being on the benefiting side of it now, but it's that I'm very much looking forward to when they get a couple players who are as good or better than Travis Konecny to see what this offense can be, because it's freaking fun to watch. Last time we talked, we both kind of agreed that the wild card in the Metro and maybe the whole East is the Devils, what they do at the deadline, where they go from here. They still trail the Flyers by 7 points. They do have 2 games in hand, just beat the Flyers up at MetLife in the Stadium Series. I agree. If some team in the East is going to make a run, it's going to be the Devils to knock someone out of the current playoff position. But you were pretty high on the Penguins last time we spoke. Are you still feeling as if they might have something extra in these last 20, 30 games?
It's hard. You watch that Dubas press conference, and I was high on the Penguins because Tristan Jarry is having a much better season. Like, he's somebody that, had the Penguins, just been remotely decent, he's kind of on the fringe of the Vezina conversation, in the sense that, like, it's Connor Hellebuck and Thatcher Demko. But then I think there's this sort of Jacob Markstrom, Tristan Jarry this year that by pretty much every stat number, like, he's been fantastic. He hasn't been the problem for them this year. Their power play has been absolutely dreadful. And when you hear Kyle Dubas come out and say, we really need to talk about getting younger, I think that's sort of the sign to everyone that, yeah, they're not trading their core players, because that would be a bad idea. But I think that they're open to trading guys like Jake Gensel and Riley Smith. And if they're open to moving guys like that, or maybe a Marcus Pettersson, yeah, I think that this might be a year where they say we really need to recoup some assets. And because they're so far back and they haven't been able to play consistently, which is kind of what I was prognosticating there, which is I think they're going to be able to play consistently. They've shown over the last week that that's just absolutely not in the cards. And so I think now I look at this and I say they need to use this year and recoup some assets so that in the summer they're more well-positioned to be younger and a faster team that's more well-rounded that can actually help the production of the multiple Hall of Famers that they have on their roster.
Do you think it's possible to fix what they have now? Like, it's not going to be Letang, it's not going to be Malkin, and with those guys taking up so much of the cap, and I know we have this conversation with Toronto, but that's at least 3 of the 4 guys in their prime superstars. Like, these are older players not producing at the level they're being paid. Like, do you think it's actually possible to salvage the end of the Crosby era for this team?
I do. I think it's. I know Philly fans are not going to like hearing this, but it is a fool's errand to bet against Sidney Crosby. And I think part of the reason that Malkin and Letang have had down years is, one, that power play has been genuinely horrendous. And 2, the guys that they're playing with haven't been good. Like, they just haven't been very good. And I mean, let's face it, they're both going in the Hall of Fame, Malkin and Letang. But as they get older, they are not set up, in my opinion, the way Crosby is to continue to perform if they don't have surrounding pieces. I think Crosby is still capable of driving the line. Like, he's also on the fringes of the Hart conversation if the Pens are even anywhere near the playoffs because of the season that he's having. But with Malkin, I think he needs to have at least one winger that's a legit helpful offensive winger. And right now he doesn't have that. So I think when they trade, or if they trade Gensel or Smith or whoever, the guys that they bring in, they have to be guys that are going to be able to complement and drive the play a little bit, because Malkin can't do it by himself. And I think where Letang is concerned, anytime, like we saw Carlson and Burns, that didn't work well together. Then they go their separate ways and they're both excellent. I think we're kind of seeing that here in the sense that we know they're both slam dunk Hall of Famers, 2 of the best defensemen of the generation, but maybe they just don't work well together because they both need the puck so much.
Definite possibility. I mean, we saw that with Carlson and Burns. Like, listen, you can't have 2 point guards. It's just that simple. Someone's going to be playing out of position when you have that going on. I want to move over to the Atlantic now, and more specifically, the Maple Leafs, because we always have to discuss the Maple Leafs no matter what. If there's a hockey show, we talk Toronto. The Leafs went 5-0 without Morgan Riley. Has their recent run kind of changed your opinion just from a week ago that this shouldn't be an all-in season for Brad Treliving and company?
Honestly, no. I think if you can get Chris Tanev for a 2nd-round pick or a B prospect, that kind of thing, then yeah, because I think Brody and Liljegren showed over the last 5 games that they're actually a good pair. And Brody has kind of had a down season, and that I think part of that is due to the loss he suffered over the summer. And now he's playing on his correct side when he's playing with Liljegren, and Liljegren's taken a huge step lately. So I think you need to find out an appropriate partner for Morgan Riley. And if you can get a Chris Tanev, then I think that significantly balances out the roster. But by no means do I think that they should be giving up major assets for guys like Adam Henrique or Noah Hannafin or anything like that. Unless Hannafin comes with an extension signed, sealed, and delivered, I don't think you can afford to be eschewing out prospects this year. And yes, Matthews is having a historic season. There's no doubt about it. But around him, there are some serious concerns. And so I'm not necessarily sure that 5 games without Morgan Riley, where you look good against, outside of Philadelphia, not great teams, is a really good barometer here. Like, you should beat Arizona. You should beat St. Louis. And frankly, if we're talking about the Leafs, you should beat the Flyers. So I think when you evaluate that, you have to say, like, have they really proven it? I'll be interested to see tonight when they play the Vegas Golden Knights how that looks. But for me, I look at this and I say, I don't think it's an all-in year. I think it's something where if you can augment around kind of the sides, that's okay. But you shouldn't be trading your first round pick because you don't have enough. You're going to end up in the Pittsburgh Penguins scenario, and that's not a place you want to be.
I don't know. I feel like a first for Scott Laughton. That would that's that playoff grit y'all need. I'm just saying.
Definitely a bad idea, Bill.
I want to talk about some trade deadline stuff in a minute, but first, Austin Matthews having the insane season. We saw it up close. He needed 7 minutes to score 3 goals, basically single-handedly win a game that the Flyers played really well in. It was like, yeah, it doesn't matter. They have Austin Matthews and we don't. So that's the way it goes. Looking at this Hart Trophy race, 51 goals in 54 games, 6 hat tricks. I know it's kind of been like, hey, this is Nathan MacKinnon's year. It's kind of been written since the beginning. Like Connor McDavid gets off to the slow start, and it's, well, he doesn't have one. It's MacKinnon. Kucherov has had an amazing season as well, but when you see a guy on a 70-ish goal pace, how is he not the front runner? Right now I see MacKinnon at plus 185, Matthews at 250, Kucherov 275, McDavid 350. How are you kind of handicapping the Hart Trophy race right now?
Okay, so if you really want the blunt answer, I think people are just tired of the Maple Leafs and they don't want to give Matthews his flowers because people get angry. The reality is if anybody else were scoring at this pace, Connor McDavid included, like if you think about it last year when McDavid was on the chase for 60, 65, it was all we heard about. And it was like, oh, yep, this guy's like slam dunk for the Hart or whatever the case may be. You're talking about a guy who is on pace for 77 goals and era adjusted. If you adjust Brett Hull's 91 goal season, it would be adjusted down to 78. So we're talking about one of the best goal scoring seasons in the history of the National Hockey League. And we're going to sit here and argue. If you think about it, how many goals has Matthews scored that have either tied the game or taken the lead? And the answer is a lot of them. I believe it's over 30. So when you look at that, then you look at the fact that he is the only player in the Hart Trophy conversation where 90% of his points are primary, and the next closest guy is 75%. How is he not the front runner? I understand Nathan MacKinnon, and he is having a ridiculous year. He has a point in every single game at home this year. And the reality is it should be a 2-horse race between MacKinnon and Matthews. And if Matthews hits 70, I don't know how you don't give him the Hart, because he also is playing on the penalty kill. He's up there in takeaways. He's having a fantastic defensive season. So it's not like he's just goal scoring. He's having a phenomenal 2-way year as well.
Yeah, I think I saw you tweet about the 90% primary points, and I was like, that is maybe even crazier than the 0 empty netters stat, which is also wild. Like if he had a few, we're talking about a goal a game. Just a few empty netters. We're in a goal a game category, and that's absolutely freaking wild. And I'm glad you brought up the maybe, I don't know, anti-Leafs bias, but voter fatigue. Like, I feel like at a certain point in a lot of sports, it's like, yeah, we know he's a great regular season player, but who cares? Like, Giannis won the back-to-back MVPs, and then it was, he ain't getting a third till the Bucks do something in the playoffs. Just not happening. And now he's kind of re-entered the conversation again. Yeah,
that's such a stupid way of looking at it. The MVP is not a playoff award, guys. That's what the Conn Smythe is. Like, I don't understand where that is. And we saw this with LeBron or even Stephen Curry. And it's like, you know what? If they have the best season, 5 consecutive seasons, they should win the MVP. And I think there's an argument to be made for Matthews if we're going to talk about the definition of the award. I have some serious doubts that the Leafs would be in the playoffs without Austin Matthews this year, because the rest of the team has been genuinely that bad. Like, if you think about that game against the Flyers last week, Austin Matthews scores 3 of the 4 goals. The Flyers win that game going away if he doesn't just decide for 7 minutes that I'm going to be the boogeyman. And so that's what an MVP is. Like, that is the very definition of the most valuable player. And so every year we have this litigation about the meaning of the award and this, that, and the other. You score 70 goals in 82 games, I'm sorry, but I have a really hard time believing that somebody else is more valuable than you are, because goal scoring is the hardest to do in the league, and we have that conversation every single year.
It's no team has enough goal scoring. Every team looking like this time of year, it's like, well, what do we need? Oh, we got to pot a few more. Like, and he's the best at it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this race goes and the controversy down the end. I do want to move to some trade deadline stuff now. And I mentioned Scott Laughton a couple minutes ago. The story going around right now, the reports are, yeah, Flyers are opened. They want a first-round pick. Half the league's like, oh, we'd take Scott Laughton. And then they see the price tag and go, yeah, I'm not so sure. Running whatever models you use to run these things, whatever it takes for you to come up with the actual value, like a team in its sane mind, which most aren't, especially this time of year, a team in its sane mind, what should they be giving up for Scott Laughton with this year and 2 more at $3 million for a pretty good bottom 6 forward?
Yeah, I think you made that point right there. He's a good bottom 6 forward. Okay. So that right there, you should not be giving up a first-round pick for a bottom 6 forward or a bottom pairing defenseman. Like, that to me is horrendous asset management. I would give up a first-round pick for Adam Henrique. He's playing in the top 6, having a fantastic season. That's maybe something I would explore. Scott Laughton has 2 years of term left, and that's great. But I think when you look at it, that's a first-round pick. And most of the teams that are giving up first-round picks for guys like Scott Laughton or Chris Tanev, you're going to be picking in the 20s, which is effectively the same value as a second and a third-round pick. So you might as well just give up a second and a B prospect or a decent prospect for Scott Laughton, because number one, I think that fits Philadelphia's timeline a whole lot better than a first-round pick that's going to be 3.5, 4 years away anyways. And two, unless you're getting an impact player, and I'm talking about somebody that can actually, like, score some goal, an Elias Lindholm, for example, like, I don't think the Jets should have paid a first-round pick for Sean Monahan at all. And I would say the same thing about Scott Laughton. I think he's in the same kind of tier, maybe a little less than Sean Monahan. And I thought a first was too much for Sean Monahan. So I think for the Flyers, if you can get a second-round pick and like a second and a fifth for Scott Laughton, that makes some sense to me. If you can get a decent prospect, maybe like a B+ prospect or an A- prospect, yeah, that makes some sense to me. But to think you're going to get a first-round pick, I mean, I'm sure some silly GM's going to pay it, but like I think that would be an overpay is kind of what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, we're hoping for the overpay. Everyone here, I mean, last night, he misses a wide open empty net goal, and everyone goes, well, there goes the first round pick. Like, every move he makes is being dissected based on his like perceived value right now. I think the Flyers move him. I don't know how many teams are going to be super interested in doing it at the deadline, though, with that price. Maybe if the price comes down this summer, we'll see, because he does have term left. But it's very, very interesting. Something else that has come up this week with the Flyers, we talked a lot last week about Sean Walker, what maybe he's worth in a trade. Sounds like maybe they're not, and this is probably just a negotiation tactic. The offers for Sean Walker aren't what they were hoping for. So now suddenly, we're open to re-signing him. And that sent Flyers Twitter into mayhem. The idea of re-signing a 29-year-old unrestricted free agent defenseman in a rebuild for, you would assume, decent term. What do you think a fair contract for him actually looks like?
So what I would say is this. If you're re-signing Sean Walker, you are not re-signing Rasmus Ristolainen. Like, you can't have both, because you have Travis Sanheim and Jamie Drysdale, who are going to play ahead of both of them and should be playing ahead of both of them. And so I think right there, you're kind of picking, and if you re-sign both, you're nuts. So you got to pick. And so that kind of tells me they're willing to let Ristolainen walk, which, okay, like, I'm fine with that, because I think he's a bottom pairing defenseman on a contender. I don't really think he's a top 4 guy. And so at Sean Walker, I look at who he compares to. I look at Dom Luszczyszyn's model. I look at the Evolving Hockey model. I look at my model. I think right now, his contract is about where he needs to be. So if you can re-sign him at 4 years, 3.25, 3.5, something like that, I think you're okay because he has shown he can play top 4 minutes if he needs to, like injuries. Every team goes through injuries. So he can step up and he can play sort of in that role. But I think anything above 3.5, you're kind of getting into overpay territory. If it were me and I'm looking at full blown appropriate value, 2.85 is about where my model has him on a 4-year deal. And I think you're pretty happy with that if you can get Sean Walker, who's a decent puck moving defenseman, for 2.85, like on your bottom pair when you've got Drysdale and Sanheim ahead of him. I think that would be okay.
That's if they were to figure out a way to move on from Rasmus Ristolainen. I don't think I'd hate that. If you were to get him at that price and not the 4 to 4.5, I think he's going to get on the open market. I would live with that. That's why players love free agency, because you get overpaid. Teams do dumb shit.
He's right-handed, so let me tell you, I think he's worth like 2.85. I'm telling you, I'm not going to be remotely surprised when he gets $4.5 million. Like, he's a right-handed defenseman. Tyler Myers is a great example. Like, look what Jim Benning paid for him. Look what Jim Benning paid for Nate Schmidt. Look at what guys are being paid because they're right-handed. It's just one of those things that happens. And so Sean Walker, basically you have to add, we call it the RHT, because in Canada we have GST, which is like the sales tax. RHT, right-handed tax. As a defenseman, add 30% to what they're worth. Okay, well, there's your 4.5, like, or $4 million. I'm not going to be remotely surprised if somebody steps up and goes, yeah, we'll pay you Ben Sherratt sort of term, and then we'll give you $4.5 million on it. Like, I don't know. It's kind of nuts to me. Like, I could see him getting Justin Hall's deal in Detroit, and that's going famously well because Justin Hall is the 7th D there, making $3.5 million.
That's it's another just one of these things that we're all like, all right, Danny, be smarter than all of your predecessors, basically. That's what we're hoping for right now. The Jack Adams race. Now, it's not listed everywhere in the U.S. I bet Tortorella a couple weeks ago at 10-1. I'm seeing him now in places at 12-1. Rick Tockett's kind of running away with the market at -280. Rick Bowness is at 10-1. Paul Maurice 12. Knobloch 15. Do you think this market is like? I know it's going to go to, okay, yeah, they had an amazing season. The PDO wave of, all PDO waves is going to result in an awesome record for Vancouver, but -280 for Rick Tocchet when you're looking at, I know I'm a homer, but what John Tortorella is doing with a team that everyone expected to be in the lottery and high up in the lottery, this market does not look correct to me.
No, it doesn't. But that's the old saying, right? Find me a Jack Adams winner and I'll find you a Vezina winner. Like, Thatcher Demko is where he's basically second behind Connor Hellebuck for the Vezina. Okay, well, who else is in that conversation? Rick Bowness. The difference being is that the Winnipeg Jets are not on a PDO bender, and that Rick Bowness is actually got his team playing in a different system. He's getting players to play above where they've played previously in their careers. And Kyle Connor hasn't even had that good of a season. And so you're getting contributions from other guys. Alex Iafallo, Gabe Vilardi, Mark Scheifele has been so much better this year. And then you've got the back end. And so I look at this and I say, like, when you combine PDO and Thatcher Demko, that's why the odds are where they are. I have Bowness and Torts ahead of Tocchet because I think what they're doing is less attributed to luck. And in Torts' case specifically, it is far more impressive to me, and this is my opinion, it's far more impressive to me to be a lottery team that's sniffing the playoffs and that has been in the playoffs for the majority of the season than it is to be a team expected to be a wildcard team and finishing first in your division. Like, it's far more impressive. And the reason the Canucks are where they are, and part of it, obviously the PDO and the goaltending, but let's face it, the Edmonton Oilers were absolutely brutal to start the season. So, I mean, it would look really silly if Torts didn't win or Bonus didn't win and the Canucks went out in the first round. And I'm not saying that they will, because at this point there's like, it's kind of a ridiculous argument to say like, oh yeah, like the PDO bender is going to end. I mean, they've lost a few straight now. They haven't looked all that great, but man, like Torts is my guy here. And Bill, like, I don't cheer for the Flyers. Like, I don't have a bias there. I just think it's more impressive to have a guy that's coaching a team that should be in the lottery and they're in the playoff picture. Like, that's more impressive to me.
All right, well, so what you're telling me is I got to get Bonus in my portfolio and we're good. Maybe get a little more Torts now that it's at 12 and we're going to profit. So this is on you.
I'm profiting no matter what, because I got Tocchet at plus 1,200 like 5 games into the season, because I'm like, if I'm going to sit through the Canucks being really good this year, I am at the minimum going to win some money on it. So I have the trifecta. I have Thatcher Demko for Vezina, Quinn Hughes for Norris, and Rick Tocchet for the Adams, because I'm like, hey, I'm more than happy to sit through this and win a whack load of money on it. So I've got him at like 10-1, Bonus at 10-1, Torts at 15-1, I think. And so no matter which one of the three of them wins it, I'm winning a bunch of monies. So I don't care.
Got to get those portfolios started early. All right, last thing here. Rachel, I was listening to Staff and Graph. I think it was this week's episode. You and Mike are talking about Twitter and just how awful it is now. You said you like to mute a lot of words, and I love muting words. It's one of my favorite things to add to the list. I'm at 82 muted words. Do you know how many you have?
I don't know how many muted words I have. The block function, though, gets used a lot because, frankly, like, I don't care, right? And so I think I've muted, like, Game of Thrones just because it was all over my timeline at one point. I have a couple of hockey things muted because for my own, like, mental health. So I'd say I probably have about 30 muted words, and maybe 20 of them are hockey related. A couple of them are soccer related. And then I unmute words. So like during the football season, I had football things muted. And then I'll unmute them because then it's like usually news in the off season as it pertains to those players. So I would like to stay up to date on that. But yeah, hockey wise, I'm just like, nope, mute. Because if it's important enough, somebody will text me about it.
That's outstanding. All right. No, I just Twitter it's just fucking terrible now. It was always a bad place. Now it's a bad place that sucks. All right. Thanks a lot.
It's brutal.
Thanks a lot for joining us again this week, Rachel. I hope to talk to you next week. And as we lead up to the trade deadline, I mentioned the Staff and Graph podcast. Where else can people find all of your stuff?
Yeah, we've got a YouTube where we're uploading a bunch of different reaction videos, a TikTok. I'm also doing some writing stuff for Your Betting News. So if you want to actually follow along with my bets, that's kind of where I'm doing it. It's with a bunch of my friends. So just kind of joining in for some fun there. And so I know a lot of people have kind of been asking about hockey betting. And so if you want to kind of tail some of the stuff that I do, that's a place you can find some of my picks.
Outstanding. Thanks again for joining us, and we will talk next week.
Sounds good.
We all silly like the mayor.